It's a book of conversations. It's an odd, unusual, delirious book of conversations. I lucked out in finding a conversational partner, Alex Stein, who cares for the same things that I do, the same people that I do, the same dead friends. We have the same dead friends. Nietzsche, Rilke, Baudelaire, whomever else was in there. And we realized at some point, we should talk about these guys and see. I mean, we call it many things. We called it literary soul gazing, which sounds really pretentious and like we should be summoning spirits. But I think it is. It's the kind of conversation you have with yourself, and someone else is as sympathetic to the subject as you feel about it. I never thought you could collaborate on a book because one is so particular and their vision is such that maybe after the fact I can collaborate, but not during the creative process. But in this case, it was a conversation, and I thought, that's open-ended. It's spontaneous. I want to be surprised, and it was really very easy. I mean, I could not. I will say I could not have had this conversation with anyone but Alex, and that's why I've never put this book out before Alex came around. The way I got in touch with him is he's a fellow aphorist. He also writes these peculiar sayings, which now somehow seem to be having something of a renaissance. But growing up, sayings were what you read, by dead authors or sages or wisdom literature or whomever. But yet now, for whatever reason, people are writing aphorisms again. Maybe Twitter is to blame. Maybe it's the whole shortened attention span at the same time, this condensing, this idea of people, you want to say it in as few words as possible. So he's someone that I got to know as a fellow aphorist. And that's how we spoke. And then at some point we thought, well, why not have a conversation? Because he's done that before. He's had a book of, I want to say the title of the book was Imaginary Interviews with Imaginary Writers. I'm misquoting it. You'll edit that out and find the right one and make my mouth speak in the right way. But he'd already done something like that, and he was confident enough that he viewed the interview as an art form in and of itself. That whatever the writer was saying was not the last word. That will be translated and polished and turned into something else. So having that first conversation was a big deal for me because I thought I couldn't say these things to somebody else. I couldn't. It would be the equivalent of talking about your intimate, let's say, sexual life to a complete stranger. I think your spiritual life or your intimate, philosophical life is on par somehow. And suddenly I thought, no, I'm okay. I can talk to this guy because he gets it. And so that was the first conversation. Alex is a terrific listener, but he's also an editor and a writer and a poet in his own right. So after we have our conversation, that's the raw material, and then he goes back and he sort of turns it into something, into art essentially. So I never worried when I was talking to him because I felt I'm in safe hands. I trust what he's going to do with this. And I was always pleasantly surprised with the outcome. I think there are some writers that we turn to because we sense a sort of spiritual affinity. They've gotten to the places, those hard-to-reach places within us. I reach behind my ear, but it's even harder to reach than that before us. And so these become somehow our spiritual mentors. They've articulated these great truths that we're still, climbing after. But then at some point you realize that these guys too, were influenced by other writers, etc. So yes, I have certain writers. Alex and I share the same literary masters, if you will. But at some point you realize this is our conversation too, being had through their lives, through their mouths. But it's our way of talking to one another through these masks. It's a book that is concerned with the life of the spirit in a structured way. So we're not promoting any particular way with a capital W. These are writers, some of them very problematic in the sense of difficult writers who certainly didn't pronounce any way. They're atheists, they're existentialists, they're Nietzsche, Kafka, all of these miserable, heavyweights. But at the same time, I think Alex and I had an unspoken understanding that we were only going to share where there was a greater balance of light than darkness. So we're mining these dark thinkers for light. So if you are someone who is curious and somehow perceives literature as a way to alternatively pray or bow, then we come to you with our flying mat. How's that?